All right, welcome back. If you will, today on page 69, or whatever page you're on, we are going to be talking about polynomials. Okay, so go ahead, write that in your table of contents, and once it's in your table of contents, if you want to go ahead and flip over. Now, I do have a few things written, so if you want to pause and write, title your page, and then write that for me. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see all this part. So if you want to pause and write that for me really quick, and then once you have it written, unpause and I'll go over this part, and then we'll have some examples. Okay, so polynomials. The first thing I want you to do is underline the poly, because poly means the word many, which is why I wrote an expression consisting of many terms. Okay, they're going to be split up, the terms, by a plus or a minus. So you're looking for plus and minus signs today. Now we have to do two things. Today we're going to be classifying and we're going to be writing in standard form. So starting off, standard form just means you write it in alphabetical order with the highest exponent first. Now, we've been working where we were combining like terms and I let y'all write it however you wanted to. Now you have to move to standard form. This is where I've been telling you the STAR test writes it a certain way. So this is the way the STAR test will write it. So now you're graded on this way. Okay, once you have it in standard form, we're going to be classifying it. So you have to look at the degree. The degree is what we call the highest exponent. So in order to classify, you look at two things. Excuse me. So I have these two half tables. We're going to fill them in. Okay, if you have a 0 degree, this means that there is no letter. We call this the constant. Okay, if it is 1 degree, we call it linear. So it would make a straight line. If it has 2 degrees, so a squared, we call this quadratic, which is what we just finished working on, so a parabola. If it has a 3 degree, we call it cubic, and a cubic makes an exponential graph. And if it has a 4 degree, we call it quartic. Now, we don't do any quartic graphs or 4-degree graphs, but you will see linear, quadratic, and cubic. Now, to figure out if it has number of terms, remember, this is where I told you you're looking for plus or minus signs. Okay, if there is no plus or minus sign, so there's only one thing in the problem, we call this a monomial. That should be really easy to memorize because mono means one. Okay, if it has two things, so there's one plus sign or minus sign, we call this a binomial. And bi means two, bicycle. Okay, for 3, we call it a trinomial. Tri meaning 3. And for 4 or more, we call it polynomial. Remember, poly means many. So 4 or more. Okay, so now I'm going to move this up. You're going to be using this classifying chart, so don't look too far away from that. But if you want to write down these examples, you can go ahead and write down the examples. Okay, so for my first 6 problems, all we're going to do is classify it. So I'm going to look at this number 1. It's 6. The first thing I'm going to look at is the degree. And remember, degree, you're looking at letters. Okay, there are no letters in here, so I put 0. We're going to call this constant, comma, and now I go and look at how many terms. There's only one thing in this problem, so this would be a monomial. And that's all you have to do. Okay, for number 2, I have negative 2x. I have one letter, because remember, you're looking at the exponential spot, and there's a 1. So this would be called linear. And there's still only one thing in this problem. There's no plus or minus signs, so this is still a monomial. Okay, moving to the next one, 7x plus 1. The first thing I look at is the letter. The letter has an exponent of 1, so this is linear. But now I have a plus sign. So 7x is one thing and 1 is one thing. So this has 2 things in it. When it has 2 things, we call it a binomial. Okay, moving on, I've got x squared plus 2x minus 5. The squared is my highest exponent. So this is a second degree, which means this is quadratic. Okay, and I look to see how many things there are in this. I have a plus sign and a minus sign. So there's 1, 2, 3 things, and 3 things mean trinomial. Okay, moving to my 5th one, I have 4x to the 3rd. I already have a 3, so this is a cubic. and I look at how many terms I have 1, 2, so this would be a binomial. Moving to 6, I have my biggest exponent I see is this 4. Okay, that 4 means this is quartic. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces, so this would be a polynomial. Okay. From here, the other part of your worksheet, you're going to have 2 more parts, is writing in standard form. So when you're doing standard form, let me move this down so you can see this a little better. You have to go alphabetical order. So if I look at the first problem, the only letter I have is x. So I start with the highest exponent. The highest exponent is 7x to the third. I'm going to cross that off with the plus sign because I don't need it anymore. Then I'm going to find the next highest exponent, which would be a positive x squared. And I put a plus sign because it was positive. And then my next letter would be this negative x. Don't need that anymore. And the only thing I have left is plus 64. Okay, moving to my next example. Again, I only have 1 letter, so I start with the biggest exponent I see, and that would be a negative x to the third. Don't need that anymore. This x is the only other letter or variable. Don't need that anymore. And then that leaves me with a positive 24. So this is all standard form is writing in order. Moving to the third one, now I have A and B. So I'm going to start with A. Everything with A has to come first. So the biggest A I see is A to the third. And I no longer need A to the third. Now I have an A squared and I have an A. So A squared comes next. So I'm going to put 5 A squared B squared. It doesn't matter that there's a B attached to it because A still comes before B. And I don't need that. Now I move to my other A, which is a positive 2AB. And then the only thing I have left is minus 2B to the third. Okay, for my last example, I have x and y. So I'm going to start, x comes first with my biggest x, and I have a negative x to the third. Won't need that anymore. Okay, my next x that I see is this no, that's not positive, a negative 7x squared y squared. Okay, there are no more x's, so I'm going to move to the y. So I have a positive 5y to the third. And then I have no letters, so that plus 13 goes last because the constant always goes last. Okay, on your worksheet, you're going to be doing both of these, and then you're going to be just combining like terms, stuff you've already learned how to do, and then putting it in standard form. If you have any questions, let me know.